This is Water's Edge, and I'm John Waters. Join me as we have real conversations with the defenders and innovators shifting the balance of power in cybersecurity. Water's Edge is sponsored by iCounter, leading the third wave of cybersecurity with the industry's first counter-threat operating system. Welcome to Water's Edge. Back in Vegas again. Thanks for joining us today. It is Vegas after 5 and the last night of blackout, so I am ready. And I am blessed to have a good buddy of mine today, Mr. Skunk Baxter, join us. Thanks, Skunk.
Hi, buddy.
Good to see you. So, Skunk and I go way back. And Skunk is one of the creative geniuses that looks at the world very differently, and you'll see how that translates into the help of the nation, help of the music industry, and help in many facets of mission space in the industry that most people wouldn't think you'd ever see coming out of the former lead guitarist, the Doobie brothers. So we're going to kind of go walk through the life here and learn a few lessons along the way. So Skunk, and you and I met, 15, 20 years ago, where we had a mutual friend that said, you two guys, and I think it was a different word, are crazy bastards that look at the world very similarly. And that connected us, kindred spirits ever since. It's been a blast and a great friendship. So
That's true.
I appreciate that. So let's start off early. You know, you're a science geek that love music. And as we'll learn today, you know, music started off as more art. And as you understood, it turned into more science. And then you understood the application of the core principles of the scientific part of music. And then you move that into military applications and help the country rethink through your defense systems all the way into space. So we got quite a journey to talk about, but the big journey is the wait between now and your book release. From rock to rocks to rockets, right? Rock to rockets.
Yeah.
That'll come out in January, and it's been fun, you know, talking with you over the years as you've been piecing that together. And I frankly can't wait to read it.
Oh,
and I know all of our viewers are going to love to read it, particularly after spending time with you today.
Well, I hope so. It was fun.
So early rock and roll. What's your first entry point? Was it a band when you were a kid, a teenager? How'd you first get in the game?
Formed a band called the Tarantulas when I was 11 years old. I grew up in Mexico City. So myself and my good friend Abraham Laboriel, who ended up being one of the first call studio musicians, bass players of the world, formed a band, the two of us, called it the Tarantulas. And we started playing, you know, parties and stuff. And then a friend of a friend of a friend of a friend got us up to the big radio station there. We played our song, Tarantula, and somebody cut a disc and started playing it on the radio. So now all of a sudden we're, you know, a couple of kids, not a hit record, but, you know, radio play. And so we're starting to get gigs. So 11, 12, that was my first foray into music, I guess, on a professional level.
I've never heard of a two-person band. What did he play?
The Original Ventures. He played bass.
Okay.
Or actually, he played the other guitar with a lot of bass notes, you know, put into it.
Yeah.
The Original Ventures were just Bob Bogle and Don Wilson.
Nice.
Playing guitar. They only got a drummer and a bass player later on.
So then who gave you your first shot that it kind of started moving into the big leagues where you're like, wow, I can make a career out of this and have a blast along the way?
Well, I suppose I could make the case that if I was getting paid to play gigs at 11 years old, then I guess that I realized I could maybe, you know, who knew?
Right.
But much later on, pretty much when I had just graduated from high school and went to prep school in Connecticut. So I was spending a lot of time in New York, working on 48th Street, on the street where all the music stores were. You know, lots of musicians hanging out. And starting to meet enough people, so I started doing recording sessions and started playing with bands. And I guess the first band that I had that had national recognition was this crazy band called the Ultimate Spinach, which is part of the Bosstown sound. There was Eden's Children and Earth Opera and a bunch of different bands that came out of that era, produced by MGM Records. And yeah, then things really started to take off.
Yeah, that's cool. So it's the kind of first, I guess, headliner band that most people today's generation know. It's probably Steely Dan, right? Is that was the first kind of major
Yeah,
one that
in
folks
terms
today?
of, it's hard to say because Ultimate Spinach had 3 albums out. We were doing gigs. I was playing in bands like the Holy Motor Rounders. I was playing bass for Tim Buckley.
We could take a survey. There's not be a lot of Ultimate Spinach guys.
Probably
You'll
not.
probably catch a few,
Probably not.
Steely Dan,
And I,
and a
for
lot of
one,
Doobie Brothers.
doesn't break my heart. But yeah, I'd say on some level, Steely Dan would probably be certainly the most recognizable
Yeah,
and a great place to start from.
yeah, for sure. For sure. And then you got into Doobie Brothers. And how would that start?
Well, I was playing with Linda Ronstadt, playing steel for her, and playing with a number of country artists, Johnny Rodriguez. The transition from the Doobies, from Steely Dan to the Doobie Brothers came around 1970, I think 74, 73, 74, something like that.
Okay. And then I don't think a lot of people know this, but didn't you recruit Mike McDonald into the band?
I did. I asked Michael to join, and it worked out really well.
Yeah, what a great find. So that was a fun ride.
And he was a friend before because he had toured with Steely Dan. So we know each other. Yeah, perfect fit.
So now you're moving into Doobie Brothers. Now you're a science nerd. You're now inside the band. You're seeing the reaction to music and
Right,
the
I'm
fans.
building guitars, doing the electronics for guitars, working with guitar amplifiers, electronics.
So how far in your journey from 11 years old to that point was it when your brain started shifting from the art of music to the science of music and the power?
Right away, because I was fascinated by how I could put this thing underneath a guitar string and get it to come out from that thing over there. It's like I always say, a good way to start is when you stick a knife into the toaster, you find out pretty quickly which way the electrons are going. So, yeah, there's something there.
Yeah.
As soon as you recover.
So all right. So you had the science part of it straight away.
Yeah.
But when did your brain start escaping from rock and roll and start shifting into your mission space of the country and national security and how you might be able to apply some of your unique skills and thinking and creativity of music, back into the defense sector?
Well, I suppose, again, we're always trying to find milestones, trying to find, places along the journey that you can drop a pin. Guess it's when I wrote a paper on how to convert the Aegis weapon system. It's a Navy air defense system to do missile defense. And I just wrote it because I'd been reading all the defense magazines because I was trying to get as much information about the digital revolution as I could. I could see that music was moving in that direction. Certainly recorded music was moving in that direction. This was all before CDs and digital, the digital reproductive cycle of music and video. And so as I read this stuff, I would retain information. And my dad always said, if you've got a good idea, just write it down. So I wrote a 5-page paper on how to modify the system. Gave it to a congressman buddy of mine. No. So he gave it to the vice chairman of the Armed Services Committee, the Congressional Armed Services Committee. We then called him and said, was this guy from Lockheed or Raytheon or something? No, he's a guitar player for the Doobie Brothers. Now, I suppose that sounds strange, but he immediately called me and said, we'd like you to come to Washington. Would you accept a position as the civilian advisor on missile defense on the Armed Services Committee? Now, people say, well, that doesn't make really, that's wacky. Well, you're familiar with the band Queen, right? Brian May, the guitar player, who's a very good friend of mine, just got his PhD in astrophysics. So maybe it's not that all that wacky.
Yeah.
And the obvious connection between the physics of the universe, of which vibration and frequency, as Nikola Tesla said, frequency is everything. The connection between the two becomes more and more and more obvious. So on the surface of it, it may look strange, but when you look past a couple of trees, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah. I mean, it's really interesting in our discussions over the years. How when you made that shift, you've always had a foot in both, right? But and I see that natural trajectory, and I see the way you use the science of music to catapult you into different applications of that same really generic physics and all the logic that flows from that, and application in all ways. The part that I thought was really interesting is the neurological impulses that you can create leveraging music to stimulate different reactions in people's emotional state. Tell us about that, because I remember the story you told me. You were with a general somewhere and he didn't believe it. And you're like, I can make you feel all these emotions in 30 seconds. And he's like, yeah, right. He said, go find a guitar somewhere around here. Tell us the story. And he probably never heard it. I never heard it until then. It was obvious, right? Rocky, all these major songs have such, reactions, emotional reactions to them. But I never really thought about it in the scientific way that you did, and you communicated, and then you demonstrated it when you proved it to him.
Well, I'll give you an example. The first performance of Bach's Toccata and Fugue in D minor, which people say, what's that? Well, every vampire movie you've ever seen, you've seen da 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 da. That's Bach's Toccata and Fugue. The first time that was performed in a church, they burned the church to the ground. Scared the living crap out of everybody. They probably should have done it at the end, but they did in the beginning. The emotional reaction was so insane, was so deep, that the people reaction burned the church. Then Stravinsky, when he wrote The Rite of Spring, they performed that in Paris, and people ran out of the theater and looted 10 blocks of downtown Paris. They lost their stuff. Now, what's going on here? What's going on is, in music, in Western, well, all kinds of music, but in Western music, we have a 13-note scale. And the intervals between those notes create chords. So if you're playing in the key of C, and you play a C and an E and a G, those three notes, that's a C chord. And you hear it, and it registers as a C chord. So between C and E are two intervals. Between E and G is another two intervals. So these intervals interact, and they interact mostly, and creating even harmonics. Harmonics are notes that are generated above the note that you hear. And anybody who plays guitar out there knows that if when you tune your guitar, sometimes the string on the 12th fret, and you hear the note one octave above the note on the guitar. If you do it 7 frets down, 6 frets down, you hear the note 3 octaves above. And so when all these notes combine, they create tremendous amounts of harmonics, which add richness and flavor and whatever warmth, whatever you want to, how you want to define it. However, if you also say, for instance, say we're in the key of C, and I already said that G is the fifth interval in the octave. G, or C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. We're back to the octave of the original C. If you take that fifth interval, which is G, and instead play a G flat, and the C, there are no even harmonics. It's all odd harmonics, all prime numbers, indivisible, divisible only by itself in one. Your brain does not like that. The Catholic Church called that the devil's interval. Stravinsky and Bach used that in those compositions. It affected the neurological, it affected the secretion and the cocktail of neurotransmitters in people's brains and made them nuts, angry, frightened. Well, that's how your brain operates. Imagine you're at a bar and instead of all these beers, you have epinephrine and vasopressin and oxytocin and neuroepinephrine and adrenaline. You mix these neurotransmitters to create the emotion.
And you can create that with a guitar.
You can stimulate it with the guitar because you're stimulating the frequencies.
Yeah.
As we talked a little bit about just a couple of minutes ago, that stimulate certain certain combinations of the secretions of those neurotransmitters. Again, that's what creates emotion. And we talked before. And yes, I love falling in love and I love all that stuff. It's all great. But oxytocin in your system, if you secrete that, you'll fall in love with probably a piano bench with time. You know, and vasopressin, you're not going to like that person anymore. Adrenaline is going to make you, fearful and alert. So because your brain is an electromagnetic machine, it operates, the fuel is sugar, glucose, but it's an electromagnetic machine. It creates electricity. That's how your nervous system works. Electrical impulses going from one nerve ending through the synapse to another nerve, so on and so forth. It's like picking up a phone. So now the brain, which is an electromagnetic machine, which both broadcasts and receives frequencies, starts to receive these frequencies, translates them into the proper cocktail of neurotransmitters. And that's how you perceive emotion.
No doubt. Let me give you the backdrop for this. So when you think about that, you thought about it initially through a music lens. And you knew that if you created certain chords and certain neurological impulses, that song would be a hit. You could stimulate a psychological reaction, a neurological reaction.
Probably the best example of that would be movie soundtracks. People
Yes.
that understand how to translate the audio part of the emotion of the scene
Right.
into something that your brain can translate in a non-visual.
Right. And then you work into the power of the digitization of the world.
Yep.
And now the ability to communicate these impulses all over the world and probably have enabled some of the best psychological operations ever executed in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And you look at some of the things like TikTok did and all these other,
Oh, yeah. And what they're doing now.
They've had the psyche of a generation. Brilliant play. With all the neurological impulses, they're playing a guitar with your psyche of people that are developing it. And
Or a voice.
Yep.
Or any combination
You got it.
of frequencies, whatever the origin may be.
Yeah. So when you moved into your world of, as you talk about, spinning a rock around a piece of vinyl,
Right, dragging a rock around a piece of
to create sound, and then you're moving into this digital world, and the first hacker of your industry, Napster, took advantage of that and digital space to all the things you accomplished. And now we begin to inform your brain of the risks and opportunities that come in cyberspace when you start moving the digitalization of everything and the ability to manipulate it, enable it, access it, abuse it.
Oh, and by the way, the dragging a rock through the grooves of a plastic penal platter, frisbee, is an analog way of recreating music. Digital music creation, which is taking basically ones and zeros translating into computer language, doesn't do well generates a lot of odd harmonics. That's why a lot of people have trouble listening to digital music. If you listen to digital music live for any period of time, you're going to get real tired real fast because your brain can't translate. So, digital music obviously was good because you could put a lot of programming on a single place, had bigger dynamic range. I mean, I've mastered records with the needle bounce track. Oh,
Right.
okay, bro, we got to change that. And it's a different world, but there's trade-offs. And a lot of it is the emotion that you feel. I think, and we can go into this argument some other time or discussion of the difference between analog and digital reproduction and how that affects your brain.
Well, the digital world we're just inalienably connected to now, right? There's some analog recourse, but most of it's
And you mentioned
digital.
TikTok.
Yeah. Injection. Yeah, I know. They did it right. I mean, they did a great job. You got to give them cred.
Digital heroin for kids.
That's right. That's right. It was well done. So there's a really interesting dynamic that you see in the world now shaping, right? So you got Napster. Now people say, wow, all that intellectual property that I created is just out there in the ether for free. And that exposes your brain now to cyber domain and this unfair ability to conduct warfare, mission, crime, terrorism, everything else in this completely unregulated free-for-all globally. And now you begin to combine these senses, like we talked about with TikTok, to enable to take this same scientific architecture and not just apply them for criminal activity and things, but begin to shape the psyche of people, how they operate and how they think, which is fascinating to me. But from the Napster piece, I know at a personal level, that's when you first was like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
This is going to become an entirely new frontier. It's a new domain of warfare. How do you compete in that when it's completely one-sided? There's no ability to respond.
Well, what you've done is, this is what got me fascinated in the cyber world, because I do a lot of wargaming. I deal in a world of weapons, most of which are physical. The object is to shoot an airplane out of the sky, leave a smoking crater, pick something. It's usually kinetic, which means it uses energy to create a physical change. And as I started looking at the world of digital, I went, wait a minute. This is going to be the great equalizer. I'm a small country, and I don't have nuclear weapons. I don't even have a big army. So I can't really do anything against this big country. But now I can shut down their whole electrical grid. So instead of dropping a bomb, all I got to do is send off some electrons. Now the game is totally different. And now everybody's a player. And the things that you and I talk about, and one of the areas that you've been, sounds like I'm interviewing you, but one of the areas that you have been heavily involved in is understanding how that works, and also trying to understand how to react to it and to defend against it. Because, you can wear a bulletproof vest, which usually protects you from getting shot, but unless you plug your ears, I can get to your emotions right away, which may actually be a better way. Do you want to kill everybody, or do you want everybody to wake up next morning and go, oh yeah, this guy Putin, I like him.
And I hate my neighbor.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's
game.
It is a different game. Yeah. So the debate, we've had for a long time is this whole notion of enabling capabilities and enabling authorities for the commercial sector to fight back in cyberspace. So today, pretty much the rules of engagement are you're in a boxing ring trying to perfect your art at avoiding punches. And if you get hit, how you recover the quickest, you try to graze a blow and you just had to slide off.
React.
Yeah, how do you react?
Non-kinetic way.
How do you recover?
Right.
Wow, what a thankless battle. Who has fun doing that?
It's nuts.
So then you think about the complexities in today's world, again, with this digital set of connective tissue out there and the ability to misattribute, who's the source and the infrastructure of the source, and how hard it is to get to true attribution for anybody, including the intelligence community, has got a lot of resources the commercial sector doesn't have, but they've got the best shot at it. How do you see, how has your thinking evolved over the last 10 or 15 years since you came up with the idea of leveraging some ancient legal infrastructure to enable defenders to be deputized and go get on offense?
Empowered, whatever you want
Power to do
it.
it. So how do you think through that structure? And I'd love to know the legal premise for it, because it's...
Well, it was at a SWIFT conference about 15 years ago over at the FBI and CIJTF, and I've been interacting with them for a number of reasons, and they invited me to speak at the SWIFT conference. And I said, okay. So I went up and spoke, and I said, here's the deal. What I think we should do is we should create legislation and a legal basis for the civilian world to be able to actively fight back when they are attacked digitally. Because right now, the only allowable legal reaction is the military. They have a charter, they have, laws that allow them to directly react to a cyber attack. There are specific legislation that does not allow the commercial world to do that. So I thought, okay, I'm going to do a little bit of research here. And I went back and I looked at something called letters of marque and reprisal. Letters of marque and reprisal were issued by governments back in the 1700s, maybe even in the 1600s, I'm not sure, but 1700s and 1800s, to allow privateers, in a sense pirates, to attack someone's ships of another country.
Was this after 1776?
It was even before.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
So state rights.
Yeah, the Brits were doing it. Spain, Portugal,
Okay.
France,
All right, legal construct,
Germany.
but not
Well,
necessarily
they would
US
just issue, they would find somebody and say, okay, this allows you to basically attack, I'm Spain, to attack France's ships.
It's like militia, right?
Well, in a lot of ways it is. It is. And now, as long as you only attack their ships, you will do it under our aegis. You will do it under our banner. And so this was going on all the time. So I thought, well, wait a minute. Why couldn't the U.S. issue letters of marque and reprisal to private companies? And then I started looking around, and it turns out that the laws that were instated in the U.S. Government for letters of marque and reprisal still exist. So I thought, okay, this is not rocket science. So I started to ask around. And I talked to Keith Alexander. I talked to all our guys, Mike Rogers, I talked to everybody. And they went, Skunk, you are batshit crazy. But tell me more. I want to hear more about this. And because of the firewall of the laws, and I'm sorry, I can't remember the exact name of the legislation, but it's a very specific piece of legislation that doesn't allow it. People were pushing back because obviously nobody wants to try anything new and get in trouble. But what do I care? I'm too dumb to know what I can't do. So I'm just going to, figure this out and see what happens. And over the years, I've been getting more and more traction on this till finally it's getting to the point where companies are getting desperate and they need something. You get to the point where something has to be done. You can't pee in the river. You have to finally build a toilet.
Right.
Something has to be done. And there's legislation on the Hill now to perhaps create some sort of legal capability for this. It's starting to move. But yeah, that was 15 years ago.
Yeah, I remember because
Yeah, because I talked to you about it.
yeah, I know. I know, right when you got back from that conference and you started talking about it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I had been in the industry long enough to know what the challenges look like.
Mm-hmm.
And the same ship that you were allowed to shoot down rotated flags about every 12 seconds. And had no idea which ship it actually was. And it might have sent a missile from one flag and then it spins up another one. So the challenge was really hard. I think we're heading towards the right path. And the right path to me is going to have to be, I hate to, it's so overused, public-private partnership. But to protect the national interest of the United States, it's 90% in commercial hands. And the government has the capability to be able to understand when there's nation level and consolidated and concentrated criminal activity against our infrastructure, even if it's for criminal purposes, if it cripples a national security entity, hey, you just crossed a line, that all the information flows and victimology flows into a central commercial combat response engine with the people that do have the best attribution, the skills to do it. I mean, the decentralized nature of response, given the difficulty for attribution, and there's such of the political stuff that's hard. I won't point fingers at any banks or anybody else, but I've had discussions with these guys before, a long time ago, say, is there anything you can do? Like maybe a company somewhere in a different country? Like,
me too.
I said, it's cool. You get your general counsel on the phone, they bless it.
Right.
I'm in.
It's a policy thing.
Yeah, but it's not going to work. It is a policy thing. Today, there's a willingness to find a way.
Yes.
And find a road to yes. And I'm a big believer is we got to figure out how to fight back. You can't play defense your whole life and expect great results. The asymmetric advantage of an attacker being able to now digitally leveraging AI to attack everywhere simultaneously, or more importantly, conduct reconnaissance in an automated way, know exactly how to build a bespoke capability to maintain a durable advantage over you in cyberspace with rotating ways in. Wow, it's a whole new frontier and things happen fast. So to me, I don't know that there's a set of commercial companies that you could ordain as capable. Maybe.
What's interesting is your government used to be able to protect you.
Yeah.
There were walls.
Right.
Fighter planes, there were tanks, there were armies, there were police forces, and it was mostly physical. Now, if you're a company, unless you build your building as a Faraday cage, you cut off all fiber, copper, every bit of communications to your company, which is an anathema because you can't do business that way. Now the government can't protect you anymore.
Yeah.
It used to be that's why you paid taxes for a standing army. That was one of the 3 reasons why the U.S. government was formed. Taxes. No, actually not taxes. Post office, copyright, and a standing army. Just 3. But now the government can't say to you, we got you covered. So this is why the policy needs to be done. And the same banks that I talked to, and you probably talked to back in the day, I'll call them you and me now.
Yeah, people are looking for a legal foundation to do it because the pain's risen to a threshold that folks are trying to find another way. And, in this AI and AI era, in an odd way, it gives us almost closer proximity to some symmetry. Because if they're leveraging the same frontier models that we are, now you don't have the same old mirror image bias issue that you have. Mirror image bias is, you're like, I'm going to protect against what I would do if I was them. Well, you're not them. You got to watch what they do. But in the intelligence-led security world, it relies on reuse of all their prior attack methodologies in the future. So patient 0 can inform patient 1 through N. In a day where it's dynamically created, now everybody's patient 0, And the utility of that legacy knowledge is like having a hard book encyclopedia in a library. It's cool to read, but it's not going to get you home and protecting against today's
And
world.
that was whatever's in that book in the library,
Yeah,
the date that it was printed.
gone. It's in the
Obsolete.
ether.
Yeah.
Completely agree.
Yeah.
So now we're talking about real time AI and AI.
Femtoseconds.
Yeah, those are cool. I didn't even heard of the femtoseconds.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm going to get a t-shirt. I'm a femto.
you're a femto guy. It used to be that if you wanted to bomb the United States, you had to fly from a place to the United States. That took time. Took maybe hours. Now, femtoseconds, billions of a second. In the ongoing conflict, the digital conflict, there is no time to have a meeting to discuss the strategy for the approaching attack. Those days are gone.
Yeah.
You and I used to have these discussions, and we were talking about a lot of our cyber friends about, hey, you're setting up a defensive cyber unit and an offensive cyber unit. How exactly is that going to work in a world of nanoseconds and femtoseconds?
Yeah.
They all have to be the same. It's like a Marine. In the Marines, if you're a cook, if you're a mechanic, if you're a lawyer, what are you? Always a rifleman.
Yeah.
Standing to defend or attack.
Yeah. When I talk about more symmetry moving into this AI age, because as you have frontier models on frontier models, and you can convert asymmetric advantage to more symmetrical, because you have an ability to actually test yourself, run all the attack methods that any other frontier model can create. And as long as your frontier models are up to speed with all the other ones, you should be able to find and fix gaps. But that's a direct gap against a direct target. We picked the harder gap. Okay, so you're great at protecting yourself. You're a big bank. You're a big telecom, big healthcare. But how about the weakest link in your arsenal, the side door? As we were joking around last night, the old Saturday Night Live skit, Candygram, here comes a land shark.
Right.
Plumber, ma'am. Just a dolphin.
That's it.
You're going to go through the dolphin route, right? It's the side door. So the ecosystem risk is really hard. And everybody talks about maintaining knowledge and supporting your ecosystem of suppliers to make sure they got locks and doors and camera systems and fences and gates and all that other stuff. Oh, your gates are open, or your windows open, or your door's unlocked, or your alarm system's not working. We're talking about how do you track it? There's a guy pulling up to your driveway. He's got your address in his phone. He's a known criminal. He's got your gate code. Reset your gate code right now, or just push this button. We'll do it for you.
Yeah.
So how do you neuter threats in motion, right? At line speed. That's what we're building that counter.
Yeah.
So it's being able to counter at line speed, threats in motion, left to boom. But that enables a trusted lineage between the threat, the escrow risk, validation, all the way through to counter threat op, and a trusted agent to go execute. We're not there yet, but we're going there fast.
Hey, listen,
going there fast.
We know, and I mean, if you really want to get down to the weeds, every person in your company is an attack vector. Just because your company is protected doesn't mean that cell phone that person is bringing in, that computer they're sitting down to, that medical record of the employee's daughter. I mean, there is no limit. This is almost infinite in terms of the attack vectors that are available.
Yeah, for sure.
So the question is, and you and I have had this discussion before, how do we see symmetry that we can utilize to create some sort of vaccine that will on some level protect, or vaccine, or give it whatever you want to call it, but to be able to build something that you keep building as you get more and more knowledge. But people say, I'm just going to protect my company. Yeah, well, you've got 15,000 employees.
Yeah, there's clearly and understanding the decentralized attack surface of your company, and the weakest link being business or being, humans.
But do you see enough of that?
Yeah, there's been emotion there. Identity's been a tough one, not human and non-human identity, but people are cracking the code on that. And what's happened is, I've made a career out of following the bad guys, right? So just find out where their targeting trends are and their focus. And as companies are perfecting their defenses and understanding their full attack surface, including their people, bad guys are like, okay, I'm just going to go this way. It's an easier target. I'm going to go to their ecosystem of supply chain.
What happens when they shut down the pathway that they used to get there? And you can't.
So here's what I'm talking about. The number of breaches through third parties have gone from 9% to 48% in 3 years. It's clearly an attack vector that is in vogue. So that's exactly what we're talking about, is closing those channels down in real time and just neutering all those attacks before they're executed and damage is done. And you can quantifiably measure, mean time to resilience, mean time to risk reduction, and fun time of actually countering live threats and blowing up a guy that was going to cause you harm, and protecting your ecosystem. So it's a fun mission. And I do think there's kind of 3 core pillars now in this world that we're heading to. You've got the synchronization of viruses and vaccines of Mythos Glasswing, which is, okay, here's a new vulnerability in this product. Here's 17 million ways that our frontier models can concoct of to exploit that vulnerability. Let's roll out that vaccine at your entire tech layer before we ever roll out this disclosure. So it's kind of synchronized. And then you got the leverage offensive security and find and fix. Constantly be battle testing your shelf and fixing it. And then there's the intel layer. The intel layer right now is 391 companies telling you about what happened. And we're going to operationalize that and go from a system of information to a system of action, right? So intel's driving outcomes. Intel's driving counter threat ops in real time. And that symmetry and the training that happens there is going to be fun to watch. So you and I will be working together on this project like we have the other ones.
And hopefully this symmetry and this intel piece will be designed to be predictive.
Yeah.
Because nonlinear thinking and improvisation is the secret to everything. I mean, yeah, if I want to build a bridge, that's different. Here's my stress equation. Here's my engineering. I know what this concrete can do on it. But if you're trying to predict malware, it's interesting. It's like improvising in a jazz quartet. You're taking a known theme and you're improvising over it to create something completely different. And what you and I have always talked about is, how do you design a piece of software that can, in a sense, think in a nonlinear fashion? And then we're talking about femtoseconds to react. The methodology for reacting may need to be created in a femtosecond. Because something brand new coming, and then what do you do with that?
Yeah.
So now we're in the world of quantum computing, which helps us on some level, especially with entanglement, which may be a way to reach out to the adversary.
Well, Skunk, we always go here when I start to reel you back into the now, because we're so far out into the future.
Sorry.
That's what you get when you're running all like the red team exercises and trying to be the bad guy. You're thinking so far on the horizon. I love it, but the horizon is near and it's happening faster.
But the use of quantum technology,
for sure,
will help you be predictive, because one of the tenets, or one of the recognized tenets of quantum technology and quantum computing, for instance, is, unlike a normal computer where it just operates in ones and zeros, it's basically a gate, on, off, yes, no, black, white. In quantum computing, there is the ability to come up with a set of answers in a graduated fashion, each one having a different probability of being the right answer.
For sure. And then you're going to put, the combination of GPUs and qubits and the same, serum.
Yep,
and then
that's again. So that has to be a part of this.
Yeah, it will be at someday.
Yeah.
But today.
Well, that's why I'm here, and that's why you and I hang out.
I know. We're fighting today's fight because it's plenty here. There's plenty to do in today's fight. That's what we're here to do. We're trying to help our customers defend themselves better, and frankly, help our customers protect their ecosystem of the folks that don't have the same security resources they do. So you're only as good as your weakest link. Like you're talking weakest link is employees and companies. Weakest link for companies, there's their suppliers.
Well, and I apologize. In a sense,
that's the same line. So
I'm over here, pontificating about entanglement in the quantum universe, and you're trying to design something that works. The good news is, somewhere in between, and this is not meant to be genuous or meant to be, facetious or at all patronizing. But as I look around, I haven't seen virtually anybody getting as far as you've got. That's huge to me, which tells me two things. There are people in this world that are thinking about it, and there are not enough people in this world thinking about it.
Yeah. Well, it's all about ideas and action, right? So there's maybe a lot of people thinking about it. We're doing it. And you're always pulling me into the future. And for that, I appreciate, my friend. And we will continue this at our meal downstairs here in just a little bit.
You bet.
So, Water's Edge, thanks for another instance. We had a gracious guest here,
Always
Mr.
a pleasure,
Skunk
my
Baxter.
friend.
Thanks very much for joining us. Take care. And that wraps up another episode. Thank you for joining. For show notes and other episodes, visit us at watersedgepodcast.com. Water's Edge is sponsored by iCounter, built to maintain pace with a modern adversary with its AI-native Intel-led security platform, powering the industry's first counter-threat operating system. We don't just monitor threats, we counter them.